Hello everyone. Thanks so much for having us out here. Co-op Power is really happy to be here and be representing another alternative to what we can throw into this mix of amazing models that we have here for you. I wanted to start with a quick question, which just how many folks are familiar with the model of a co-op, generally speaking? We got food co-ops, housing co-ops, a lot of rural electric co-ops we've heard a lot about. It's a great vehicle, so it looks like we have some good understanding here in the room. That varies room to room for me when we go around, but co-ops, fundamentally, the reason that I got really excited about them, are a great way for communities to collectively own resources together. So we heard from Clean Energy Collective about owning the tomato. Once the tomato comes out of the plant, the co-op model is about owning the plant. So there's a lot of different ways to do it, and how communities come together to own these resources depends on what stage you want to come into a project at and how you want to engage with it over time. But the co-op model gives you a little bit of flexibility and gives you a lot of flexibility on the legal front for how you can own projects together. So let's see. So I'm going to go through quickly who we are, what our experience has been, what the challenges are for community solar, and what our approach is that we've developed. Co-op Power started in 2004 in Massachusetts. We're across the state and we're regional, so we're New England and New York for the communities that we serve. Our framing is that we are a multi-class and multi-race movement for a just and sustainable energy future. So this is really grounded in some of these ideas about how do we bring communities together of mixed resources and mixed backgrounds to help create a full solution that works for everyone. Our model is that we have one parent entity that works with sub-co-ops that pop up when they want to do projects. So over the last 10 years, that has included a $4 million local biodiesel plant that one community started. That's included solar arrays that communities have started and wanted to own. That's included 2 energy efficiency businesses that now do $3 million a year in Massachusetts. So these are the kinds of projects where we aggregate consumers together in a consumer cooperative structure, and then we use crowdfunding to figure out how do we put these together so that when profits are produced from these activities, they go back to the same people who wanted them to happen in the first place. Our team that we've developed for community solar over the years includes Linda Nander and a full, as you can see, the legal team is about half the team, and that is always going to be true when it comes to community solar. It is just, there's a lot of different pieces to work out, but that is how a lot of this is developed. Our core principles for developing community solar are partnering with contractors and experienced local contractors who are bringing business and keeping dollars local to the community where those projects are taking place. So when we engage with stakeholders in a community, we help them identify what some of their key pieces are that they want to see moving forward in a project. So if that's keeping their dollars local and maximizing value back to community members, that's what we put on the model. And that's where we have an interactive process. We have financing options for people with limited resources. As I said, working across a multi-class background is of key importance to us, and it's in our mission, and we have been doing that since day one. We have community-led planning. As you can see in our picture down below, whether it's our annual summits that have thousands of people come to attend in Massachusetts, or when we start a planning process with a new community, it all starts with meetings like this with a nonprofit and a few other folks in the community that want to figure out how to do community solar their own way. We partner with local installers, we have cooperative ownership, and what that means is local control. So when you have local community members who are at the table who want to figure out answers to questions like, what do we do with this project at the end of 20 years when all these contracts have ended? Where's that power going to go? Instead of having a for-profit entity there at the table making that decision, you can have the community there making that decision democratically. Maybe we put more money in, maybe we do another 10 years if it's still working. One of our first projects that we've done this way was a 30 kilowatt project on top of a food co-op. We had our cooperative provide funding, blending debt financing and financing from our members so that we could provide power to that food cooperative downtown. So that's where we had a community-owned project back in 2013, and we wanted to figure out, as community solar developed, how do we have community-owned, community solar? And that was the next step. Some of the big challenges that you'll hear about over and over again that we came across are the federal tax credit, where it's one of the biggest blessings that we've seen for the solar industry is the fact that there's this huge tax credit that's spurring development. And the biggest challenge for limited resources communities is, not everyone has a huge tax bill at the end of the year that they can credit this against. So that has driven all the models for solar towards large banks and securitization and pieces and places where you can really monetize that tax credit. But if you can find ways to monetize that and use that at the community level, then you can return a lot more benefit back to the community. And that's one of the pieces that we seek to do with all of our projects. As we've talked about securities and ownership, when you have an ownership-based model, you need to address securities law that was set up in 1933 to protect people. We're now in a position where we want to be getting the word out and we want to figure out how we offer community solar to people with an ownership stake that's not conflicting with these laws. And that's where the cooperative law stands in as a way for communities to come together and get around a lot of those securities barriers. Financing and community ownership, there are challenges on both of those levels, and we have, as we'll see, what we came at the other end were models where communities can finance these projects entirely themselves, or they can partner with banks and larger institutions who can monetize those tax credit and other incentives as you move along. After about 3 years of participatory planning and back and forth with our communities, we came out with 2 models, and these are flexible models as some of our partners in New York City have been talking about. We're trying to find ways where communities who want to do this their own way can have access to the legal and financial resources to go and put together projects on their own terms. So our 2 models that we've come out with are a multi-class member financed model, and that's where you bring together a group of folks, some of whom have pay taxes each year and have a tax burden, some of whom don't, and you can bring them together and have them create the ideal off-taker set for a project where you can have them, some providing money up front, others providing money over time. Additionally, we have the more standard, what's known as the tax equity flip model, where you have large banks coming in or not always large banks, but people with significant tax appetite coming in and taking advantage of a tax credit on a project, and then using that upfront funding to provide value to community members. Our next project that we're doing, just to continue to demonstrate that, is a 600 kilowatt project on the same land as our biodiesel plant that we've built. Our financing is coming 60% upfront from members who are going to be able to receive that tax credit back to them. Like we said, owning that tomato plant, right? They are going to receive all the benefits that come from that. And then additionally, we're partnering with our local fuel assistance provider in order to provide these benefits out through our CAP agency to folks who are low income. And then, as we've talked about, there are different models. You have different models for how you finance projects, and then you have different models for how you address different communities. Here in Syracuse, we've got access to more land, you've got access to larger project sizes, so you may see projects that are in the multi-acre, most likely, that will be larger and will be shared by a larger number of off-takers. If you're in a city, you don't have access to that, so you have to figure out different innovative strategies for how you can put smaller systems on a rooftop and get that benefit back to the community that's living right under there. And that's some of the work that we've been doing down in New York and over in Boston, where we have actually been aggregating churches together to figure out how do we get a whole group of 20 churches who are nonprofits, can't take advantage of that tax credit themselves, but want to go solar. How do we have a cooperative come in and provide all those off-takers, which are the members of the churches, with power back to them? So that's one of our projects we're most excited about, in giving churches new ways to engage with their membership in this kind of cooperative structure. And there's a lot more detail there, but I'll just say, looking forward to talking with folks as the day goes along. To summarize, what the co-ops can offer to community solar is a way for folks to come together and own a project and engage democratically through the planning process. So when you decide, and this became particularly important, I would say, in Massachusetts. We had a production incentive that on many projects was worth millions of dollars over the course of a life of a project. And almost no projects were returning that benefit back to communities. That was just going to the people who were financing projects. And so when you think about how much money can be on the table for some of these projects, it's important to consider who benefits and who the off-takers are and where all the financial incentives that we have, folks like NYSERDA and all of these state and federal incentives are going. Are they going back in consumers' pockets, or are they just going back into the traditional financing economy? And that's a big decision that we have going forward right now. So with that, I'm going to leave off, but thank you so much for having us out. Look forward to talking more.